June 1944. The Second World War had reached a critical turning point. The only way to halt Hitler's progress and reclaim lost territory was to mount the largest seaborne invasion in history, the event that would become known as D-Day. You are about to embark upon the Great Crusade, toward which we have striven these many months. The eyes of the world are upon you. The hopes and prayers of liberty-loving people everywhere march with you. The D-Day invasion was spearheaded by paratroopers who leaped into the unknown. Their mission was to prevent enemy reinforcements. Without their actions, Allied victory in the West would not have been possible. I have to tell you, people say we're heroes, but that isn't true. We volunteered for this. We trained for it. We were paid to do it. That doesn't make you a hero. There could have been no spearhead, no paratroopers, without the workhorses of the sky, the Douglas C-47s. The aircraft that by the hundreds flew across the English Channel to Normandy, tasked with delivering the airborne divisions to their date with destiny. One airplane had to lead the way. It seemed impossible to believe that this aircraft, so crucial in leading the D-Day invasion, could end up in a scrapyard. It just couldn't be true, people thought. Someone had a hunch there was something special about this airplane, and then he was told, well, that airplane was the lead plane into Normandy. This is the story of the man who found it, and who was determined to restore this iconic aircraft. It is the story of the plane's role in one defining moment in history, and of a dream that she would fly again, returning to the coast of France to commemorate the 75th anniversary of D-Day. That's all, brother. The plane that led the D-Day invasion. So far, in the dramatic story of That's All, Brother, we have learned how the lead plane on D-Day was lost, abandoned in a boneyard, later rediscovered by military historians, and ultimately identified by the Commemorative Air Force. We have seen how the CAF resolved to restore her, so the aircraft's role in dropping the very first paratroopers on D-Day could be honored and remembered. We have followed the restoration at Basler Turbo Conversions, where decades of neglect and corrosion were painstakingly repaired, and how, after a hesitant start, the engines were finally coaxed into life. Now the focus turns to her most significant engagement yet, the journey back to Normandy for D-Day's anniversary. But will she fly? In the short time since That's All, Brother has been fitted with vital new engine cowlings, and her landing gear has undergone successful and thorough testing. With the new cowlings in place, it has become possible to run the engines at full power. The outlook is promising, but the team still awaits the plane's most demanding test of all, her first flight. It's thrilling to be here. For me personally, it closes the circle. The last time this airplane flew, I got to fly it in. Being chosen to fly it today is humbling and exciting. This airplane represents a huge step for the Commemorative Air Force. When I started flying warbirds, CAF and others, over 30 years ago, the difference between a warbird and a freighter was just a paint job. This aircraft shows how far we've come, both as the Commemorative Air Force and within the warbird community. We now have these flying warbirds that are truly exquisite. This airplane is museum quality in its restoration, and we're able to take her out and fly her. That's a big leap for the CAF, and I'm excited to be part of an organization that's committed to preserving such aircraft, not just mothballing them, but getting them out there for people to see. And taking her to Normandy, so the plane that led the drop can fly over Normandy again. That's huge. I think that's an interesting element. This one piece will make 52 layers. Watch on mobile devices or the big screen, all for free, no subscription required. You know, the biggest concerns with any maiden flight of an overhauled aircraft are the propellers governing correctly and the possibility of initial engine failure. We've got 2 new engines, and you'd ideally overhaul one at a time, but now both are brand new. With new engines, there's always the risk, though typically, if there's an issue, it's more chronic than catastrophic. For the first 20 hours on a fresh engine, we pay very close attention, but there's no need for undue worry. It's a very straightforward airplane, and this restoration has actually made it simpler. Most C-47s have been around for 75 years, modified countless times. This one's been stripped back to its most fundamental, basic form, exactly what it was meant to be, A simple aircraft that 19-year-old kids with only 200 hours of flight time could operate in the chaos of World War II. Yes, it's a big deal from a historical perspective, but from a flying perspective, I'm confident we'll likely have a list of small items to address, as always happens with older planes. But I expect the best. We prepare for the worst and hope for the best. That's what I expect today. All right, welcome everyone to the first flight. Thank you all for being here. We'll begin with a safety briefing for the pilots. Doug, Tom, are you both set? Great. From maintenance, the aircraft's ready. Regarding the weather, we've checked multiple sources, and it's as good as it gets in January in Wisconsin. The snow should taper off this afternoon, so we can get a decent flight in. We'll have good enough ceilings. Winds are 14, gusting 20, but mostly down the runway, so we plan to use the west runway. On this first flight, our goal is simply to put some time on the airplane. We won't be pushing any limits. We just want to make sure nothing's leaking. No smoke, no oil. We'll fly around for about 15 to 20 minutes, then land to inspect the aircraft, check for dryness, and do any press interviews. After that, we'll go up again for a second flight. Any questions? Yes, the crew is as prepared as possible, and every precaution has been taken, but tension lingers as the plane heads down the runway. This is a piece of American history, a very important one, and it deserves respect and utmost care. We'll watch for temperatures, pressures, and leaks, anything that might affect performance, and generally keep a close eye on the airplane. Our plan is to fly 30 minutes on the first run to ensure everything's functioning well. We'd like to get 3 flights in today, but daylight might become an issue. This was the very airplane that led the drop on D-Day. I'm so proud of the commemorative Air Force for bringing it to this point. Yes, there's still plenty of work and funding needed. It's just the beginning, not the end. As you can see, she still needs a paint job. We have to do the interior work, too, and the volunteers at the Centex wing in San Marcos will tackle it as soon as we get the plane home. We look forward to having the Queen of the C-47 fleet as a member of the CAF. After 20 minutes in the air, thankfully without incident, that's all. Brother completes her maiden flight and returns for the crucial ground checks. Magnificent flight. Great airplane. We have a winner. He had just one job today, to keep me from messing up. And he did it well. Flying a DC-3 is like putting on an old pair of favorite boots. They just fit. I've been flying DC-3s for 32 years, and it's always a thrill, but this one is special. On behalf of the commemorative Air Force, a big thank you to all the employees at Basler. You've done a terrific job. It's been a thrill watching your team embrace this project. This is a big story, and you've played a pivotal role. Thanks also to the folks of the Centex wing, who worked tirelessly to raise money and get behind this effort. And to the thousands of men who bailed out of C-47s and stepped onto Normandy's beaches on June 6, 1944. Cheers to you. That's all, brother, was there at the vital start of D-Day, a day that marked the beginning of the end of World War II. On that day, Allied troops landed in Normandy, setting in motion the liberation of strategically important ports and towns throughout northern France. This wouldn't be the airplane's final mission. She took part in many more before the war ended. But D-Day was certainly her most crucial. Her time at Basler now complete, that's all. Brother journeys over 1,000 miles from Wisconsin to the CAF's Central Texas wing in San Marcos. The Centex crew awaits her arrival, knowing both her historical importance and their role in preserving her heritage. We're thrilled to have That's All brother back in Texas. She flies beautifully. Everyone who's piloted a lot of C-47s and tested this one says it's like flying a brand new airplane. That said, she's nearly 75 years old, so a few minor issues are expected. We have a slight oil leak on the left engine, so we're working with the engine overhauler to address it. If you look closely, you'll see tubes carrying oil from the blower section of the engine. And when we shut down, the oil drips and gets blown around in the wind. Sometimes it pools, sometimes it leaves droplets. It's not enough to ground the plane, but it does leave an unwelcome puddle wherever we park. We want to be professional and avoid that, so we're working to fix it. We're fortunate we've just secured a paint supplier. Polyfiber will donate all the paint, and we found someone to do the painting here in Texas, which is terrific. We're also working with Air Corps in Minnesota. They're experts in the precise lettering and insignia the plane carried originally. They'll research period manuals and instructions from 1944 to create over 300 stencils so that every letter and marking is exactly right, inside and out. I'm personally excited about the next few months. As a historian, I appreciate that while the airplane is now sound mechanically, we still haven't finished the authentic interior. For nearly 18 months, we've been quietly sourcing parts, from vintage radios to the correct paratrooper water tank. Even the lavatory must be original and functional. A lot of that work will be completed by volunteers around Tulsa, where the plane was originally accepted into service in spring 1944. Then there's the paint job. We'll reapply the invasion stripes just as they were in World War II. The 87th Troop Carrier Squadron found out on a Sunday that they had to paint stripes. They didn't have enough black and white paint on base, so they borrowed from local English hardware stores, leaving IOU notes, then used mops to slap it on the planes. It was done so the aircraft wouldn't be misidentified by Allied gunners, which is what happened in Sicily. These stripes are now iconic. Before painting them, it wasn't yet D-Day. Once painted, it was D-Day. It all began at Greenham Common, where That's All Brother took off on D-Day and received her invasion stripes. These were mandated after hard lessons learned in the Mediterranean, so Allied gunners and sailors could immediately spot friendly planes overhead. We had $100,000 airplanes with $500,000 worth of radar. We had altimeters, PPI scopes. The B-17 system adapted for low-level mapping. Our navigator always knew exactly where we were. During WWII, technology advanced rapidly. British bomber crews developed ground imaging radar, H2S. America adapted it as H2X, which helped differentiate land from sea. That's all. Brother carried the SCR-717 radar sticking out under the plane in that big radome. Only the Pathfinder and lead planes had radar, so everyone else followed behind, relying on them to reach the drop zones. Because modern regulations forbid flying with that bulky radome, the CAF wants a replica to display on the ground. For it, they must match precise measurements, so UK-based historian Ian McLaughlin visits the Flixton Museum's example. Ian, great to meet you. I understand you spoke to the CAF. Yes, Joe called me recently. Awesome. So you have something thereafter? I do. Let me show you. They carefully remove a large dome from storage. It's seen better days, that's for sure. Could it be a papier-mâché composite like the first drop tanks? Whatever it is, it's fragile, though originally it had to withstand the elements at high altitude. On the inside, you can see some layering, but it's not fiberglass. We can't find any serial number. On D-Day, only the lead aircraft had these domes. It was not popular with some pilots who felt it impaired performance. Indeed, after the big day, Donaldson, That's All, Brother's pilot, switched back to his usual aircraft, the Belle of Birmingham, which flew without the radome. Because the CAF wants the plane displayed as it was on D-Day, replicating the dome is essential, even if it can't be flown. Back at Centex, another missing piece is the nose art. Careful research has revealed its original shape and style, and the team is eager to restore it accurately. The letters might each need a tweak. It's looking good, though. I started painting nose art in 2007, collaborating with the CAF on their B-24. Growing up, I was steeped in WWII airshow history. My dad and uncle served in the Air Force. Painting nose art is rewarding. Seeing this plane, such a key historical piece, once again wearing its original markings, that's really special. They used a projector for layout, matching old black and white photos as closely as possible. Once drawn, they carefully hand-painted the letters. It's time-consuming, with multiple coats needed. I'm super grateful for all the help here. They're really supportive, which makes me confident enough to produce quality work. With such a historic plane, it's an honor to be involved. Now, with details falling into place, they focus on her upcoming mission to France. They must plan the route, figure out what support the plane and crew need, and prepare for contingencies far from home. It's been 74 years since D-Day, and very few people remain who actually took part in it. Memories fade, but this restoration is almost a rebirth. Our ultimate goal is to bring her back for the 75th anniversary in 2019. But it's tough to get there, crossing the Atlantic twice, operating far from our support system, and will likely be away for 2 or 3 months. The CAF plans to send 3 planes, this one, that's all, brother, along with D-Day Doll and Bluebonnet Belle. We have to be prepared. We don't want to be stranded in Europe. We'll take spare engines. They cost about $70,000 each. Tires, consumables, radios, you name it. During WWII, these planes crossed the Atlantic hundreds or thousands of times. Ours is practically brand new after the restoration, so we're not worried about the flight itself, but we do need to address logistics. We'll follow the shortest route, leaving Texas, heading northeast to Connecticut, then Newfoundland, Greenland, Iceland, and finally over to the UK. It's a lot of stops, and at around 130 miles per hour, it's a long journey. There won't be another 75th anniversary of D-Day, and unfortunately, not many living D-Day veterans can attend. But we can still reignite interest in their sacrifices. This airplane will be our vehicle for that. Oshkosh Air Show 2018. After intensive research, and particularly by historian Matt Scales, the CAF has found many relatives of the wartime crew and paratroopers. They're invited to see the plane for the first time and even join a memorial flight. My dad was part of history. We only discovered how significant his role was about 3 years ago when we found his medals and photographs. We knew he served, but he never spoke much about it. When we asked, he'd just say he went to England, then to France. That was it. He was a squadron navigator overseas, flying lead positions, participating in the paratroop and glider drops on Normandy, southern France, Wesel, and Holland. He used everything from dead reckoning to radar navigation. He'd just mentioned he was a navigator, end of story. That was the extent of it. But about 2.5 years ago, I got a strange email from an Air Force historian named Matt Scales, claiming my father was the navigator on That's All Brother, the lead plane on D-Day. I insisted Dad flew on Belle of Birmingham. He explained the complex story. One plane was radar-equipped, the other wasn't, and it slowly all fell into place. With WWII vets disappearing, these old aircraft are all that remain to tell their story. Many visitors at shows say, that's the type of plane your father flew. But the families connected to That's All, brother can say, that's the exact plane your relative jumped from. All the original crew and paratroopers have passed away, the last in 2009, so it's priceless to have this tangible link. Matt Scales and others have worked on this since 2007. It's 2018 now, the plane is flying, and the families of the crew and paratroopers are reunited. They arrange for a special flight. We'll be airborne about 30 minutes, flying over Oshkosh. Once we level off, I'll signal for you to unbuckle and take a quick peek in the cockpit, 2 at a time. Then please buckle up again. When we started in 2007, the first goal was simply to save the plane. CAF was the only group that stepped up. I never imagined we'd actually fly in it someday, restored to its 1944 condition. Now here we are. I sat where my father would have been sitting. It was overwhelming. I broke down. Just knowing he'd been right there, it was an incredible feeling. My sister and I scrambled to get here when we heard about the flight. We'd contributed to the restoration and tracked its progress. Being able to sit in Dad's navigation seat and imagine what it was like, it was spectacular. After this emotional flight, the official relaunch event takes place in the evening. Family, friends, and supporters gather to celebrate. Yet for the CAF, it's bittersweet. On behalf of the entire organization, thank you for being here tonight. Next, we have a special group among us. The families of That's All, brothers, paratroopers, and crew. Please raise your hands. Now a serious announcement. We had planned to send 3 KF aircraft to Normandy. You may have heard that Bluebonnet Belle had an accident on takeoff Saturday. Thankfully, everyone escaped, but Bluebonnet Belle is a total loss. Its squadron cannot join us for the Normandy mission. It's a stark reminder of how few of these aircraft remain and why we must tell their stories. Adding to this misfortune, the oil leak on That's All, Brother's left engine has become severe. The plane has flown additional hours, worsening the problem. She returns to Basler Turbo Conversions where the engine is removed for repairs. In her hangar, That's All, Brother now sits grounded, raising the grim possibility that she might not make it to France in time for D-Day's 75th anniversary.